Hello everybody and welcome. This is History Dude, and today we are continuing our series of the history of battle with the Battle of Marathon. Now, to give you a little backdrop on the Battle of Marathon, the city-states that flourished in Greece from around the 7th century BCE were small and apparently weak entities compared to the mighty empires of the Assyrians and the Persians. But their citizen armies, fighting shoulder to shoulder as spear-bearing infantry, proved more than a match for the subject soldiers of Persia. In the 4th century, the Macedonian Greeks created an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean to India even. So that's how far they got. Now, the city-states of ancient Greece were they based their armed forces upon the obligation of free citizens to fight when required, usually as hoplites, as you can see here, heavily armed foot soldiers. Now, since the city-states were quarrelsome and fought one another repeatedly, citizens were frequently called upon to fulfill this military requirement. The citizen armies were not large and could not campaign for long. Most hoplites were farmers who needed to be at home at key points in the year, but their battles were ruthless and bloody, fought at close quarters with spears. And the two most powerful city-states were Sparta and Athens. And Sparta created the most formidable army in ancient Greece by training its citizens elite for war from the age of 7. They were thrown into military barracks and trained as soldiers. The Spartans prized hardiness and fitness above all else, and group exercises were performed each day. In adulthood, male citizens were assigned to a mess where they were obligated to eat communally, and each belonged to a band of 40 soldiers who were sworn to obey their commanders. These bands were the basic units of the Spartan army, which alone among the city-state forces had a clear hierarchy of command. The army of Athens, on the other hand, was made up of citizens who had no particular training, but shared the belief that a citizen's first duty was to fight. If Sparta excelled on land, the Athenian warships dominated at sea. And here you can see an Athenian bireme, and it is called a bireme because there are two rows of oars. And that is why it's called a bireme. Bi is Greek for two, I believe. And here you can see some Greek armor. Now, the Greeks adopted bronze armor in the 8th century BCE. The full panoply consisted of a helmet, a cuirass for the upper body, and greaves for the knees and shins. Along with the spear, sword, and above all shield, this armor was considered the distinguishing equipment of the hoplite. Yet not all city-state soldiers wore it. The hoplite was expected to provide his own armor, and many could afford only a helmet, or possibly a helmet and greaves. A full set of bronze armor was thus a status symbol and provided an opportunity for a conspicuous display of wealth. And the armor of a Greek hoplite was designed both to protect and to impress. Polished bright, it made a dazzling display. And here you can see the bronze helmet with cheek guards. You can see the bronze cuirass made of two plates held together at the sides by leather straps. And you can see the molding, which idealizes the warrior's muscles. Oh, you can even see nipples. The Greeks were very into the human body. They loved priding themselves on the human figure. Now, the Greek and Persian Wars, which brings us to Marathon. At the beginning of the 5th century BCE, Greeks in Anatolia revolted against the rule of the expanding Persian Empire. And despite support from two Greek cities, Athens and Eretria, the Persian Emperor Darius the Great crushed the uprising. He then decided to punish the Greek cities that had aided the rebels. And the first Persian invasion was repulsed at Marathon in 490, but 10 years later Darius' successor, Xerxes, made a more determined effort at conquest. The Greeks rose to the challenge once more, holding up the Persians at Thermopylae and defeating them at Salamis and Plataea, and we will be getting into those as well later on. An Athenian-led alliance continued to fight the Persians in the Mediterranean until 448, but Greece was not invaded again. And when I say 448, I mean 448 BCE. Now, for the Battle of Marathon. The invasion force sent to Greece by Darius in 490 BCE was commanded by a Median general, Datis. But first, I'd like to show you a picture of Darius. No, not this picture. I just included this one because it's a stylized representation from the video game Civilization V. No, this Darius. Now, a fleet of 600 triremes, now the Persian triremes look something like this, carried the Persian army across the Aegean to land at Marathon, close to the main target, Athens. Now, the Athenians, meanwhile, mustered their hoplites and marched north, joined only by a small force from Plataea. Now, when the army arrived at Marathon, the Athenian commanders hotly debated whether they should fight the Persians at once or wait for their allies, the Spartans. Miltiades, the most aggressive of the Athenians, won the argument, and the Greeks immediately advanced to confront the Persian host. And here is a map of the Battle of Marathon. Now, as you can see, the hoplites arranged themselves in a broad phalanx between two streams. In order to avoid being outflanked by the larger Persian army, Miltiades had to stretch his line, which was left thin at the center. One source also suggests that he protected his flanks with ramparts of felled trees. To the amazement of the Persians, the outnumbered Greek foot soldiers advanced aggressively in close formation straight at the enemy. On the flanks, the Persian line collapsed under the charge, but in the center it was the Greek phalanx that broke under a hail of arrows and the axes of the Persian auxiliaries. The hoplites on the flanks responded by turning back from the hot pursuit of their opposite numbers and enveloping the Persian center from both sides. The battle disintegrated into a disorganized melee on the beach as the defeated Persians sought to re-embark on their triremes. About two-thirds of their force escaped on their ships, and according to Athenian legend, the runner Phidippides was sent to carry the news of the victory back to Athens, the original Marathon. And when he actually got to Athens, he delivered the message and he dropped dead. But that is where we get the modern day marathon, where runners compete. We get it from this battle. Now, Herodotus, the Greek historian Herodotus, is our main source of information about the Greek-Persian Wars. Now, he lived circa 485 to 425 BCE. Now, although he was born too late to have seen the events he describes, his accounts are full of vivid details that may have been told to him by eyewitnesses, since he is in that time frame. And one of the things that he stated was, quote, "The Persians, when they saw the Greeks coming on at speed, made ready to receive them, although it seemed to them that the Athenians were bereft of their senses and bent upon their own destruction. For they saw a mere handful of men coming on at a run, without horsemen or archers." End quote. And that is about as much as I can teach you about the Battle of Marathon. I hope you have found it enjoyable and educational. And as always, remember to have an awesome day.